How Hitler really died, inside the final hours that ended World War II's darkest chapter. The Third Reich didn't collapse with a grand explosion. It ended in silence, concrete walls, and a gunshot that echoed through history. After 12 years of terror, propaganda, and total war, Adolf Hitler's story didn't end on a battlefield. It ended underground, hidden from the world he had set on fire. And you know, the truth of those final hours is darker, stranger, and more revealing than most people realize. This is not myth. This is not conspiracy. This is the real end of Adolf Hitler and his wife, and why it still matters today. By April 1945, World War II was over in everything but name. Allied forces were ripping through Germany from the west. The Soviet army was tearing into Berlin from the east. The once mighty Nazi war machine was broken, outnumbered, outgunned, and running on fumes. Hitler had retreated into his underground bunker beneath Berlin, a concrete tomb built to survive air raids, now serving as his last refuge. Above ground, the city was burning. Artillery thundered day and night. Buildings collapsed. Civilians fled or hid. Berlin was being crushed, street by street. Inside the bunker, reality was impossible to escape. Hitler was no longer the roaring dictator seen in propaganda films. He was physically broken. His hands shook uncontrollably. His posture slumped. Witnesses described him as pale, exhausted, and detached from the world above. Still, he clung to delusion. He spoke of phantom armies that no longer existed. He blamed betrayal instead of strategy. He refused to leave. The man who once promised a 1,000-year empire could not accept defeat. In one of the strangest moments of World War II, Adolf Hitler decided to marry Eva Braun just hours before their deaths. Eva Braun had been by Hitler's side for years, hidden from the public, erased from official imagery. In the bunker, she chose to stay, even when others fled. On April 29, 1945, with Soviet forces closing in, Hitler and Eva Braun were married in a brief civil ceremony. There was no celebration, no future plans, just paperwork, witnesses, and the knowledge that death was coming. That same night, Hitler dictated his final political testament. He blamed the war on his enemies. He denied responsibility. He named successors who would never rule. Even at the end, he refused accountability. This was not remorse. This was control, right up to the final breath. Hitler was obsessed with one idea. He would not be captured alive. He had seen what happened to Italy's dictator, publicly executed and displayed. That fate terrified him more than death. To Hitler, suicide was preferable to humiliation. He tested cyanide capsules on his dog to confirm they worked. The result was immediate. There would be no failure. On April 30th, 1945, Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun retreated into a private room inside the bunker. Eva Braun swallowed a cyanide capsule. Hitler used cyanide as well, but also shot himself in the head to ensure death. It was fast. It was final. Aid staff entered shortly after. The bodies were wrapped in blankets, carried into the garden above the bunker, doused with fuel, and burned. Hitler had given strict instructions. He did not want his corpse displayed. He wanted it erased. Even in death, he tried to control the narrative. When Soviet troops reached the bunker days later, they found little left. Burned remains, charred fragments, confusion. For years, uncertainty followed. The Soviet Union deliberately fueled rumors. They suggested Hitler had escaped. They hinted at survival stories, not because they believed them, but because chaos served their interests. In reality, forensic evidence confirmed the truth. Dental records matched Hitler's remains. Witness testimonies aligned. The timeline made sense. Adolf Hitler died in Berlin on April 30th, 1945. Eva Braun died beside him. World War II in Europe would officially end just days later. Hitler's death wasn't heroic. It wasn't dramatic. It was small, cowardly, and hidden. And that's exactly why it matters. Dictators often craft myths around themselves. They want history to remember them as powerful, unstoppable forces. Hitler's end shattered that illusion. No final stand, no redemption, just fear, isolation, and self-destruction. For the scars of a global storm fronts, this moment represents something deeper. The collapse of ideology, the cost of blind obedience, the danger of unchecked power. You know, the bunker wasn't just a hiding place, it was a symbol. A closed world built on lies, collapsing under its own weight. Hitler's death did not erase the damage. World War II had already claimed tens of millions of lives. Cities were reduced to rubble. Entire generations were scarred. But his end marked the final chapter of Nazi rule. A regime built on fear, racism and war ended not with victory, but with silence underground. That silence still echoes. Understanding how Hitler died helps strip away the mythology. It forces us to confront reality instead of legend. And it reminds us that, no matter how powerful someone appears, history always collects its debt. The death of Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun was not the end of suffering, but it was the end of a nightmare that reshaped the world. It's a reminder that ideologies built on hate eventually collapse inward.